Hi, this is Richard Karn. You might remember me from Al Borland on Home Improvement. And you're listening to my interview with Elaine Goodman on Gogoodman.com.au.
You had a very eventful journey into acting, but let's start from the beginning. Like most actors, you started in theatre through high school. What aspect of theatre acting drew you into that world?
Well, I was in high school, junior high, so maybe I was a little extroverted to begin with, but I think I auditioned for my first thing in high school on a dare. We decided, that we'll do this and we'll see what happens, and I got into a play. My high school had a one-act play festival where there were like 10 one-acts directed by the students and everything, and I got into that, and I did very well, and I felt competent. I felt like there was something that I could do, and I think that's probably what kept me going.
After high school, it's interesting that you say you were an extrovert going through high school. That's something I can bring up a little bit later. After high school, you studied, I'm assuming, acting at Washington University, but I read that
Actually, it's the University of Washington.
University of Washington. I got them in the wrong order.
Well, there's a Washington University and there's a University of Washington, which are two different things.
That's nice and confusing.
Yeah, I know, isn't it?
Especially for an Australian. But I read that you studied in Europe. Was that before or after you went to uni in Washington? I'm assuming they're both in Washington.
No, actually, Washington University is back east, on the East Coast, and University of Washington's up in Seattle.
Okay, interesting.
It was an exchange program at the University of Washington with a college in New York, Queens College, and Joan English was the person that put this together, and we went over and we studied with teachers from RADA and Lambda and Bristol Old Vic, and then we also did the Edinburgh Festival.
And what experience did you gain in Europe that you couldn't gain studying in America, do you think?
I think the fact that I was away from home, I was in a foreign country, I was 20 years old, was all things that helped, with a little bit of maturity. Just all of a sudden you're on your own and things aren't handed to you. You're dealing with a whole new group of people that you don't really know that well. I think all of that was a really good experience.
And did you maintain your, sorry if this isn't a word, extrovertism while you were in Europe?
Well, I say extroverted, but there's a lot of people just don't want to be on stage in front of people. That's kind of a scary thing. And for me, it wasn't. So, not that I was an extrovert in the sense that I would just go out and do anything I wanted. It was just a sense of feeling comfortable on stage.
You moved to New York in 1979 after university to pursue acting again. When you were already on the West Coast in Seattle, why did you move to New York instead of Los Angeles? Was it because of that theater culture?
Yeah, I think so. I was part of a league of professional actor training programs. There were 10 schools around the country that had auditions for their senior class in New York. So right away I had contacts. I felt I had contacts in New York, like an agent and some casting people. And growing up in Seattle, which was much more of a theater town, I think I felt more comfortable going into the whole theater world than the film and television didn't seem as accessible to me at that time. So I went to seek my opportunities in New York City.
The funny part that I found about this part of your life is you heard about Home Improvement from an agent that was attending the same traffic school as you. Can you remember what your traffic ticket was for?
Oh, yeah. My ticket was for, basically, it was a very small infraction. I rolled through a stop sign on a side street.
Oh, God. Right. And
it wasn't like a major, crime or anything. It was just a very small infraction there.
And what was this producer in there for? Do you remember? Did you ask him?
Actually, she was an agent.
She
was an agent with the Gersh agency, and You know what? I think she might have been speeding, but I can't remember exactly why she was there. But you find yourself in a situation where you're with people for 8 hours. This traffic school was an 8-hour, pretty much ordeal where you had to listen to lectures and then do little tests and things like that. So, but then we had downtime where we talked to each other about the business and what was going on and who we knew in the business and stuff like that. And it came up that I knew these guys, Matt Williams, David McFadzean, and Carmen Finestra, who were the executive creator, producer, writers of Home Improvement.
Were you immediately drawn to the idea of Home Improvement when you were talking about it? Was it something that you were
No, not at all. I had
no?
no idea what it was about. I think at that point, my antenna went up and went, oh, they're doing a TV show. Well, maybe there's something that I can audition for or whatever. I had no idea what they were doing or even that Tim Allen was in it.
Was Tim Allen a household name then? Oh, he would have been from the...
Not to me. No,
yeah.
He might have been a little more in the Midwest where he did pretty big arenas in the stand-up world, but I wasn't really aware of that so much. So I didn't know him before I met him on set.
You got the job as Al Borland after filling in for the original actor in the pilot. What was your first impression of Al, and how did you play... And I think he was called Scott before they named him Al. How did you play him differently to the original actor, Stephen Tobolowsky?
Well, the original actor never actually did the show.
Did he do the pilot? Did he do a pilot or
no,
not? No, he didn't do anything.
He was cast, Stephen Tobolowsky was his name. He was cast mainly, well, not mainly, but because he's a good actor, but he was taller and older than Tim, so that there was a much more physical difference between the two. The producers thought that Tim and I were too similar, in real life, although once you put us on tape or on film, we were very different. But the original character was Glenn.
Glenn, right.
Glenn, Tim's assistant. And what happened was he got a movie and couldn't do the pilot, so they kind of downplayed that role a little bit. I think maybe they wrote out some things that they would have had him do, and they brought me in just to fill in for the pilot. This is all before the show was seen or got picked up for network play.
So did they give you any pointers about how to play him like Stephen did, or did they give you the freedom of playing him how you felt you wanted to?
They basically gave me the freedom to do whatever I wanted. They changed the character's name from Glenn to Al, and I was just kind of sweeping up in the background. There wasn't a lot. Tim mostly said stuff, and Al had a couple of syllable answer back. So there wasn't a lot. It was mostly, just kind of how I responded to him, where the audience picked up on that really kind of before we did. Because all of my background had been theater, so television I knew was a little more intimate, but all the little things that I was doing seemed to be magnified by television, and the audiences kind of knew Tim and Al's relationship before we did.
So when you got the character of Al, they basically transitioned you into a main character after the pilot. They were obviously happy with you, and they transitioned you into a main character and gave you more and more lines. Yeah.
No, they didn't.
No,
they didn't, because he was supposed to come in after the pilot, after the show got picked up. There were quite a few months. I think we did the pilot back in April, and the first episode rehearsal wasn't until mid-July. So there were 4 or 5 months in there between the time where the pilot got done and then seen by advertisers and the network, the show got picked up. Stephen got another movie and couldn't do the first few weeks of the new show, so they asked me if I wouldn't mind filling in for the first 2 or 3 episodes.
So that's weird. Does Hollywood ever do that? Do the first 2 or 3 episodes of an actual series that's picked up and then change back to a different actor? That
Well,
would have been weird to do.
I haven't heard that before, but that was my story. That was how I was interpreting it. So they kind of just went along with that, and it wasn't until an episode where Tim asked Al a question, kind of a joke question, like, "Hey, Al, do you think they call it molding because it's been in the refrigerator too long?" And that was the big joke. And I let Tim have that laugh with the audience, and then just by looking at Tim, maybe a tad too long, the audience laughed at that. And then I said, "I don't think so, Tim," and they laughed at that. And right after that episode, the producers kind of the characters of Tim and Al crystallized for them, and they said, "Well, you know what? This is working. We're not going to change it."
Al was a character that was picked on a lot by Tim, and he also had some bad luck along the journey. He was a very kind of, I'm not sure if mellow or somber is the right word. He wasn't like an extrovert, like you said you are, like Tim was. Does playing a character like that ever have an effect on your own mental health, or was it easy to leave Al on set for 8 years?
Well, it's funny because between seasons, when we'd go on hiatus and I'd come back, I would forget a little bit of what Al was, and the writers would have to remind me. They go, you got to. He's more like this, and so it wasn't something that just was right there. I wasn't playing myself. So it was a little bit of a character, and I, as the years went on, it got easier and easier to remember and play him. But he was a little bit of my father. He was a little bit of me, and he was a little bit of what I thought would be theatrical or funny.
Now, if we move on to a couple of other characters, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, Zachary, Ty Bryan, and Taron Noah Smith all went their separate ways after the show. I think Jonathan went to go study in England for a bit, Zachary went into the behind-the-scenes stuff, and Taron seemed to disappear and kind of go out of acting as well. In an era where quite a few child stars went off the rails for whatever reason, what was the difference about these three guys in your eyes? Did you, Tim, or Patricia have an impact on them, or Eric have an impact on them, or was it just their parents that were kind of keeping them going?
Well, no, I think kids are influenced by a lot of things around them. Obviously, Tim and Pat were good influences, or tried to be for the kids. They also had very strong parents that helped them through. Zach is still producing and acting. Jonathan is not really acting as much. He's directing more. I think he feels a little more shy about acting these days. And Taron, I think, is very happy doing what he wants to do, which is really not in the acting profession. It's more, he started a vegan restaurant and has a pretty full life up in the San Francisco area.
Yes, yeah. So, so they all of you guys kind of tried to keep them grounded a little bit. When you see people like Macaulay Culkin or Lindsay Lohan or people like that, which were quite prevalent back in the 90s, was it easy to keep them grounded and keep them kind of balanced? Well,
in a sense, the kids were kind of a whole nother show to me. Tool Time was where I was, so I didn't really work with the kids that often. I would talk with them off set, but on stage or on film, we didn't really have a lot of scenes together. So, and I never felt it was my place to tell them what they should do or what they shouldn't do, kind of a thing. But I felt like they had a pretty strong hand. Maybe Jonathan's mom was a little too tough with the writers because she felt that they wanted more or wanted to do other things. But it's always dicey with kids because you're dealing with these egos and ids and psyches that are still growing. So all of a sudden you have a 12-year-old that can afford to buy their parents a house. That's a whole different thing going on there than some kid that's just going into 6th grade.
I think I really liked Home Improvement because it had a lot more slapstick physical humour than the other big sitcoms of the time. It didn't rely on the sexual chemistry of the characters like Friends or Seinfeld or Everybody Loves Raymond did. It was just simple, funny comedy most of the time. Why didn't it get the credit of the Seinfeld, Friends or Everybody Loves Raymond, do you think?
I don't know. The critics kind of didn't take it seriously or something like that, and I'm not quite sure why.
Because it didn't really pick up a lot of Emmys either. So was it just the awards, or was it the critics as well that didn't rate it as highly?
Like you said, the other shows that we were up against, Frasier, Seinfeld, Friends, they were all more kind of adult-oriented humor. Whereas we had kids that we had to deal with, family stuff. But the Cosby Show was the same kind of a thing, and they were held in a higher esteem. I'm not quite sure why the critics didn't like Home Improvement as much, because the fans did. I mean, every year it was the number one show for the People's Choice. Yeah, for 8 seasons in a row. So obviously, it was something that people liked to watch, but the critics, I guess, just didn't feel like it was something that they could get their teeth into, like a Seinfeld episode or a Frasier, which was much more erudite.
Now, I'm not quite sure how to word this question because I'm asking this as a bit of a comedy fan. You had quite a few cool cameos on Home Improvement. Jay Leno was one, but I don't think you had a lot of screen time with Jay Leno. So the one I want to ask you about is Rodney Dangerfield. And I hate wording questions like this because I put a lot more research into them. But what was it like working with Rodney Dangerfield? I mean, he's someone, in my eyes, that we didn't really see a lot of as a real person. We kind of always saw the character Rodney Dangerfield when he was in movies, when he did talk shows, or whenever he was performing. We never saw the real Rodney Dangerfield. We always saw the character. Did you get to meet the real Rodney Dangerfield?
I don't think I really did. Because when he was there and on set, he was kind of playing. He was always playing the idea of Rodney Dangerfield. So it wasn't like I sat around in the green room and got to know about him. And Tim was such a big fan because he had worked at his comedy club in New York, and Rodney had helped a lot of young comics and this and that. So Tim was, he was a big fan, and maybe just wanted to protect Rodney from everybody asking him questions or something like that. So I know it was a lot of fun on the set when we were working and all that together, but I never really got to know him that well.
Can you tell me how many takes you had to do with Rodney, or did you get it done? Did you get the scene, the
we
last
did them
scene
pretty quickly.
Oh, really?
He didn't like to do a lot of takes.
Ah, so you had to kind of keep your laughter down a little bit. Were you trying not to laugh when you were kind of conversing with him on set?
Oh. You know what? That never seemed to be a problem, because I didn't have the stuff that I was doing with Rodney wasn't as funny, I think.
I think, yeah, from what I remember from the episode, you were kind of trying to get him to talk a little bit more, because it was in the very last scene, like as the credits were rolling, you were trying to push him to talk, but he didn't really want to talk.
Yeah. And that was a long time ago, so sometimes I forget things.
Yeah, right. Fair enough. Yeah, I can understand that. That's just the comedy fan coming out in me, because I've done a lot of research on Rodney. Anyway, a lot of sitcoms have a mystery. So, for example, Home Improvement, it was the bottom half of Wilson's face. In Frasier, we never saw Maris. In The Big Bang Theory, it was Howard's mother. On Friends, it was Chandler's job. We never knew what his job was. And there's a lot more on other sitcoms. How does this mystery add to the humor of these shows? Is it actually a recognized technique?
Well, I think it became a big thing of how to hide Wilson's face, how to work the scene around him standing behind a plant, or something is in the way of his face, so you never really see him. And sometimes that was what the scene was about, and then other times, it's always he always had the moral of the story. He was always kind of the guy that had the moral of what was going to go on in that particular episode. So Tim would learn something from him, and then totally, rearrange it in his own words.
Do you think that is an actual recognized technique though, or is it just something that Home Improvement did unknowingly to what every other sitcom does and now does as well? A lot of sitcoms do it as well. They have that kind of mystery, kind of unknown character or unknown thing about a certain character.
I don't know if it came. I don't know. I don't feel like it started out as a thing that they wanted to do that was similar to other things on other shows. I know Tim wanted to have this character where you never saw him that much. He's just on the other side of the fence. And then as the characters grew, obviously you couldn't just keep him on the other side of the fence. You had to bring him into the house or into the other parts of the thing. So then we had to figure out how to hide his face. Early on, in one of the first 5 or 6 episodes, Tim was talking to Wilson, and he had this idea between takes. He goes, what if I'm talking to Wilson and Jill comes out and says, "Who are you talking to?" And then we pan back in the house, and it's just an empty lot there. There's nothing there. And we all kind of stopped for a second and thought, yeah, that wouldn't work. We couldn't do that.
I read in a recent interview, just can I say that I've been wanting to get an interview for a little while, and over the past few weeks you've been trending on Facebook because all of a sudden you've started doing a few interviews. So it's kind of weird.
Well, obviously, it's funny because all of a sudden I did 2 other interviews for people in Australia.
Yeah, so I found them online as well. So it was good that I got to be the third one because I could kind of read those ones and watch those ones, and then make even better questions.
Good. It'd be nice to say something different.
Yeah, I read in a recent interview about you getting mobbed during a few trips to Australia back in the 90s. How aware were you of the show's international success? I mean, today with things like Netflix and cable TV, it's a lot easier to gauge and comprehend. But back then, there was nothing like that.
No, there wasn't, and if there was, it wasn't something that I paid attention to because it wasn't a part of my life yet. So when that kind of happened after Home Improvement took off, it's a whole other thing you have to learn to live with, and some people don't know how to deal with that, and they come off as being kind of standoffish or physical or I don't know what. I'm a little more pragmatic about those things. I just figured that if people come up to you all the time and you're going to be angry about it, you'll be angry all the time. So just be happy that people want to know or want to say hi or whatever. And after a while, you kind of realize that you are. It's not me personally. It's a larger thing in general that people are watching with their families in their own home that I have become.
Was it fun to come to Australia and experience a whole different way of life, but then people already knew who you were? Was that kind of something you could comprehend, or did it take you a little while to actually understand that?
Well, by the time I got to Australia, I'd already had 4 or 5 years of figuring out how to deal with that. At first, I was a little shy about it. I almost like I wasn't worthy. So when people would say, "Oh, are you that guy?" I'd go, "No, I'm not that guy." And then I realized, that's kind of shortchanging somebody because that's an experience that they will have now. And it's not me. I'm not being. What's the word? It's not that I'm so great. It's just that I happen to be on a show that people watch, and they enjoy it, and they then see you in person, and there's kind of like a giddiness that comes over. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is you. And to deal with that, you have to realize that, okay, it is me, but I'm not that. I'm just an actor on a TV show, and I'm so glad that you enjoyed it.
And I read that you got to go to one of our AFL Grand Finals, one of our football Grand Finals.
My God, how great was that? Boy, that was fun.
What year was that? Do you remember? I want to know who won. If you can tell me what year it was, I might know.
I want to say, 98 or 99 or 97, 98, 99, somewhere in there.
So 97, 98, Adelaide won both of them, and then 99, North Melbourne won.
Well, one team was a passing team, and one team was a running team.
Really?
Yeah, they were very different styles of the two teams that were in the championship.
Right, yeah. So they'd be completely different now, the game styles. Do you remember any of the colours of the uniforms, outfits, or whatever?
No, I don't. I'm sorry.
Right.
I really don't. But it was really, really interesting to watch because I played football when I was in high school, so I have a sense of the American football. But your style of game is like the guy passes it and the other guy can run up his back and then intercept it. In our game that would be called interference. In your game, that's just playing the game.
Yeah, and we don't have any protection either.
No.
Just a mouth guard.
Mouth guard. It's kind of like a little more like rugby in a sense, but a few less rules.
Yeah, exactly. So did you enjoy it? Did you try and find any more of it when you got back to America and watch a little bit more?
I didn't try to pursue that particular sport. Because there's a lot of other things going on in my world, in my life. So I didn't want to take on a whole new sport.
The emotion. I can't handle it.
Yeah, well, I've got my college football team. I've got my professional football team. I've got all the golfers on tour. There's a lot of things that I will pay attention to.
Do you follow any other sports? Like, are you a basketball or a hockey fan or tennis or?
Not as like when the finals come about, like the Final Four for basketball, like that. That's interesting and fun to watch, but it's not something that I'll watch the whole season. Yeah,
no, it's a pretty long season. After home, so how many times did you come to Australia? Did you come once or twice? Twice. So what was the first time you came? If you came in 97 or 98, did you come earlier than that as well?
I came the first time. I was there doing commercials for Black & Decker, and we were in Sydney, we were in Melbourne, we were in Adelaide, we were in Port Douglas, and we never got to the East Coast. We never got to Perth.
No, that's the West Coast.
Or the West Coast, I'm sorry. We never got over to the West Coast. So it was mainly just that side of Australia. But I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. The people were so great. The food was good. The beer was great. And, it's pretty. The scenery is really nice.
Are you going to come back again soon? Just before we move on to the next part of your life, are you going to come back soon?
I hope I make it back there again, because I've only seen such, a small percentage. I haven't seen the whole interior of the island, and I haven't even been to, like, say, New Zealand, which is just a hop skip from you guys, too.
After Home Improvement ended in 1999, you made a few cameo appearances on various shows and landed a gig as the host of Family Feud in 2002. Did you ever suffer from typecasting or lack of confidence after not having had to audition for anything for quite a few years?
Well, it's always nice not to have to audition. because I know I can do the job. It's just the other people don't. So you have to go in and prove yourself, and then you're up against all these other people, and they have different ideas or whatever like that. But I don't know. I might not be that great of an auditioner in a sense, but when I do the job, I feel like I do a pretty good job. I really enjoyed doing Family Feud for 4 years. That was kind of an interesting detour, something that I didn't see coming my way at all. But once I embraced doing it, it was almost like being a stand-up comic in a way. And if I couldn't think of something funny to say, I just play the game.
Did you ever suffer from being typecast as a character like Al, or did you move out of his shoes pretty quickly?
Oh, I probably was typecast in a sense, and also because I did commercials, which was something that I felt like I should do, so that I had my son was growing up, so I needed money for college educations and other things like that. So I did a lot of other commercial things, which puts me out into the public eye in a sense that isn't as mysterious as actors that just show up just in movies. You just see these guys and they become movie icons.
So you were playing Al in these ads, or were you playing Richard in these ads?
Kind of a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most of the ads that I was doing was because of Home Improvement, because there was I had built up a trust in the American psyche that if I say something is this way, it should be that way, and I think advertisers really appreciate that.
How hard was it for you to adapt to the game show format where you have to constantly address the audience and the cameras compared to on a sitcom where you only address your co-stars?
Well, it's more like theater in a way, except you can stop if you make a mistake. You can go back but with the game show the way it's going, and you've got families competing, you don't want to just completely mess up all the time and start over, because they're not used to that. So there was this wonderful sense of being forced to stay in the moment and listening to these people and their answers and responding to that and playing the game. It was it was really kind of a nice job. I once I got a hold of it, and on top of it, I really enjoyed doing it.
One of my favorite, as we get towards the end of my questions, we're getting pretty close. One of my favorite current shows is Last Man Standing, which obviously stars Tim Allen. Are you someone that gets nostalgic, or have you and Tim been good mates since Home Improvement ended? So that was just another gig for you, because you've been on that show a couple of times as well.
No, it was nice to be asked to come on the show. I enjoyed my time with that. As a matter of fact, the second time that I came on, I was out of town doing a play up in Calgary, Canada. So they flew me in for the day to do this episode where I end up being drunk, and I hit Tim's son-in-law by accident, or he hits me or something like that, and there's this character that I played has just gone downhill and hit the bottom of the barrel in a way, and I had a lot of fun playing that. As a matter of fact, the first 5 takes where we're at the baseball game and I'm drunk, we couldn't even use because Tim was laughing. I was going, Tim, stop laughing. I only have so many in me.
So do you miss those Home Improvement days, or was that fun as well? Do you guys always get along and get together and have a good laugh every so often?
Yeah, we got together a lot. It was nice. It was a very symbiotic relationship, and I still see Tim pretty regularly. We play golf, or we'll end up at a charity event together or something like that. So I see Tim more than. Well, both Tim and Debbie Dunning, who played the Tool Time Girl, I see the two of them more than I see any of the other cast.
I read that you've put a lot more time into theatre acting in the last few years. What drew you back to that kind of acting?
Well, it was the first thing I'd ever done was theater, and I always wanted to go back and do that again. I just didn't want to be gone for long periods of time, while my son was still in school. So once he went into college, I kind of made a decision that, now's the time to get out there before I can do it before I forget my lines. So I just, in the last 4 or 5 years, I don't know, I've done 5 or 6 plays. It's been really nice to get back and do that again.
Something I always love asking people I interview is, what's your relationship like with social media? It's not something you grew up with or you had the chance to use through your home improvement days, but I know you've recently got on Twitter. So what got you onto social media, and what do you like about it and not like about it?
Well, I like connecting with old friends that I haven't seen or are in different states. It makes it a lot easier to just see what's going on. Other than that, I don't know. It just kind of seems to be something to kind of waste a little time on. And it's good for promoting. I mean, if you're promoting a movie or a TV show or something like that, I guess it's really good for that.
Where can people find you on Twitter? What's your Twitter handle?
My son set it up for me, so I'm not quite sure what it is. I think it's at the Richard Karn.
Now, let's get into the fan questions, and we can wrap it up. So, Kane Shakespeare from New South Wales wants to know, what was some of the funniest things you did when the cameras weren't rolling on Home Improvement?
Well, a lot of times it was just kind of reworking the joke or working on the physical business and like that. And some of the really funny stuff that didn't actually end up on tape was all the things we were experimenting with and trying out in between takes.
Tanya Atkins from Melbourne wants to know, how well did the crew get on with each other?
The crew got on great. We had a really happy bunch of people there, and I think that came from the top with Tim. Tim, wanted everybody to be, having a good time, and he would joke, and he would. It was like a day-long stand-up.
So he was more of like an inclusive kind of person. So when you hear like Jerry Seinfeld, that like he was one that took all the royalties with Larry David, and the other cast aren't bitter about it, but they've mentioned it. So Tim seemed to be like more of an inclusive kind of character on the show and tried to get everyone involved.
Yeah. As far as the show's concerned, exactly.
Siobhan Horsfall from New South Wales says, "Oh my God, I love this guy. Needed his own show, lol." Rory Bird wants to know from the UK. Wants to know, was Family Feud a fun experience for you?
Once I decided to start doing it, I wasn't quite sold on the fact of being a stand-up, but once I decided to do it and really gave it my all, I had a great time. I really had a lot of fun.
Michael Boyer from Rosemead, California wants to know, what was your funniest experience during your time as Family Feud host?
Oh gosh, what was interesting was that we did it in real time. So all of the funny stuff that would go on during the show, you had to stay in the moment. You couldn't stop and go, oh, that's great, let's do that again. It was all in the moment. So when the half-hour show was done, it was like, I know something really funny happened about 15 minutes ago, but I can't remember what it was. Because you're so concentrating to stay in the moment. So, I think probably a lot of the stuff I just forgot.
Bullet Mustafa from the UK, this is in reference to Home Improvement. How much ad-libbing took place?
In Home Improvement?
Yep.
Very little. Yeah, it was written, and you couldn't go off too much because the director needed to know when to cut cameras. We had 7 cameras, and so he was kind of directing it while the show was going along, so they didn't have to edit. So if you stepped on somebody's line, or if you tried to something else that hadn't been there before, it didn't work as well.
Dan Martinez from Colorado asks, how fun was America's Funniest to shoot, and what's your favorite memory from it?
America's what?
America's Funniest. Did you do America's Funniest home videos?
Oh gosh, I did something that was a long time ago. America. Wow, what was it? I can't remember. I really can't.
I'll look it up on IMDb and I'll tweet you. Vanessa Perez from Texas wants to know. You kind of answered this a little bit as well. How was it working with the entire cast of Home Improvement? You've touched on that a little bit. Is there anything you can expand on?
Working with who?
The cast of Home Improvement.
Oh, yeah. It was really, it was nice. I had never worked on something that long. 8 full seasons, 8 years. You get to know people, a lot better. Even though we go away during the hiatus, then we catch up with what everybody did for those 3 or 4 months that we were on hiatus. But it was a great working relationship. There was a really nice shorthand towards the end of the season where everybody was just kind of on the right page.
Cuzgo Tut Johnson wants to know, if there were to be a reunion show, how would you want it to go? Where would you see Al's position if there was a reunion now?
If there was a reunion show?
Yeah, where would you want Al to have gone?
Well, Al might have morphed into doing something along the lines of building homes for people in need. He might have gone off for a while to do kind of Habitat for Humanity, but he also could have gone off and done a network show where he fixed up homes for people in need. Like what was that show where they would surprise people with a upgrade on their house, kind of a thing?
Yeah, we had something like that in Australia. I can't remember what it was called. We have a lot of building shows.
Yeah.
Katie Anderson wants to know, what was it like working with Tim Allen?
It was great. It was a lot of fun, and he makes me laugh. Although I got to say, I make him laugh pretty hard too.
And just adding on from that, I heard you say in a recent interview, maybe one of the ones that you've done in Australia or for Australian television or media, that he's kind of gone a bit more political, and his show Last Man Standing is a bit more political. But is he still the same Tim Allen that you knew 25 years ago?
No, he's not the same. He's not the same guy. He's remarried. He has a new child, a new smaller, maybe 5 or 6 years old. So he's aged well. Let's put it that way. And
final one, Terrian Fox wants to know, what was it like working with Pamela Anderson?
Pam was great. She was, really a sweetheart. But I got to say that, when we would work day to day, she would never really wear makeup, and she was so pretty without makeup. And then we were going off to do some event or whatever, and she shows up, in full battle makeup, and it surprised me. I appreciated her without so much makeup.
Do you still get to catch up with her every so often?
Not really. I haven't talked to her in quite a few years.
Richard, it's been an absolute pleasure. As I said, Home Improvement was one of my favourite 90s sitcoms. It's great to have a look back. I love that nostalgia feeling, and I hope you get to come out to Australia soon and enjoy what we have to offer. Thank you for talking to me.
All right, thanks. Take care.